interesting.
We're live.
I just keep really sorry because I have not been, I've not led the meeting. I've been in a lot of them,
I didn't say that, I was just like that.
Yeah.
Question you guys first for my waiting.
I will see your head text
but.
in my picture.
I've seen little blips
You got
and
everything
things
on?
on
Yeah.
YouTube and stuff. of People just, oh,
Yeah.
it's just a nightmare for them.
Little
Brittany?
No.
I think so.
Perfect. Brittany, can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you.
Oh, good to hear. Thank you. Thanks for joining virtually. Alex as well. Hi, Alex.
Hello, everybody.
So are these working for Alex, or are these just we need to project somewhere that way? Just talk that way?
Yeah,
Question.
probably if you're talking to mics, it's coming to the speaker, so that helps you.
Okay, very good. So if you see your mics ahead of you, there's a little green button before we get started. We've got about a minute before we get started. Adam, are we expecting anyone else?
I don't know. When we had a remonstrator.
Okay.
He might join via Zoom. I don't know.
Okay, very good.
Oh, there is someone in the waiting room?
That would be
Ah,
him.
good note. Those things get me every time.
Yeah.
Who does waiting rooms? And breakout rooms? Don't even. That's my day. I started from a breakout room, third time over. Okay, Mr. Bryce? Can you hear us okay? We can't hear you, but we see you talking to us, saying wonderful things, I'm sure.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, we're just fine. Okay. Are we okay to start? Yeah, Adam? Good. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and start? We haven't been live together like this. Well, there we have. But why don't we start with a pledge of allegiance? We can start there. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's great to start the meeting that way. Good to see everybody. We will call the meeting to order with a roll call. Madam Secretary, is that, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Is that something you would like to do, is call the roll for us?
If I should,
That'd be excellent, thank you.
Okay. Well. All right. Amanda? Here. Scott?
Here.
Lacey?
Here.
Cheyenne? Here. Nathan?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Adam?
Brittany.
Oh, Brittany? Here.
Okay, and we have a quorum, and we have, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the March 30th, 2021 meeting minutes that were sent out prior to this meeting. Before we entertain a motion, any questions on that? Okay, anybody would like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 30, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of the approval, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed or abstain? Okay, and the approval of the minutes carries. We will now head to the public hearing for case number 01-STP 2021 for Denver's Pizza Site Plan. And we do have some typical rules of order. We only have one item, so we'll just kind of stay in line, and Alex will help us via Zoom to make sure that we stay on with our time frames today. Thank you, Alex. And Adam, would you like to kick us off?
Yes. Okay, so let's do share screen. Share this one. Okay. All right, good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklakowski, the Planning and Building Director of the town of Fortville.
Yeah, Adam, real quick, are you recording on the Zoom? If you do, that'll show the demonstration where the YouTube will show up.
Yeah, let's do that.
How do I get to that now?
stop this for a second. Record on a cloud?
Yes.
Okay, we're good. All right, the case before you tonight is Denver's Pizza. It's a site plan. Okay, so the applicant Fritz Fence is seeking site plan approval for a planned restaurant called Denver's Pizza. It's at 110 East Broadway. It's also at 406 South Oak Street and a portion of 410 South Oak Street. By the way, the portion of 410 was the part that you authorized the positive recommendation on the rezone, and council approved that. So that is officially commercial land now. The restaurant will be in the former Denver's Auto Repair Shop. It's a 2,200 square foot building that was built in 1956. And of note, the proposed project was actually featured in Indiana Landmarks magazine because of the use of a historic building. The entire site's about 0.4 acres and will be developed with parking, fencing, some landscaping. And then this is a shot of the zoning map. The area outlined is in blue is what we're looking at in terms of the site plan area here tonight. Here's an aerial photo which depicts the old gas station out in front, repair shop out in front, as well as where the parking area will be in the back. We can always refer back to these if we need to. And then here, of course, is a bird's eye looking south of the property. Here's the site plan itself. As you can see, we'll get in a little bit more detail here momentarily. The main parking area is in the back. There is some parking along the side of the building, mainly ADA parking. There's a proposal to have outdoor seating in a band area out in front with some additional parking on the side, motorcycles. So some of the typical review items that we take a look at on the site plan for the zoning ordinance would be access. Access to this project would occur via Broadway and Oak Streets. Alley access would remain closed to the property directly. They're showing a 20-foot wide asphalt driveway onto Oak Street and then a 27-foot wide parking lot drive aisle. Setbacks, of course, for new buildings is something that we'll take a look at. Obviously, they're utilizing the existing building that's not being enlarged, so setbacks are really not applicable here. But 100% maximum lot coverage is allowed per the Broadway main design standards, which are within the zoning ordinance. In terms of the parking location, as I mentioned, the parking is in the rear of the site, and that's in keeping with the Broadway main design standards, which are in the ordinance itself. So you can see how the idea for the Broadway corridor was they have parking behind the buildings. So it's consistent with that. In terms of the amount of parking that's required, this is taken right out of the ordinance. There's a minimum number of spaces that's required, and there's also a maximum. And so for every 3 seats in the restaurant, Mr. Fence would need to provide the appropriate amount of parking. So when you do the calculations on it, he's looking to provide 60 seats in the restaurant. So that means that he'd have to have a minimum of 10 spaces and a maximum of 30 spaces. And so he's providing 23, which includes 2 handicap spaces, which would have the proper dimensions, striping, and signage. So the amount of parking that's being proposed is within the ordinance. And the minimum space dimension that's provided is 10 by 20. In terms of screening, they're looking to provide a 7-foot tall fence along the alley to prohibit that access and to provide a buffer to residential property to the west. They'd also be providing a dumpster enclosure screen with a gate as required. And then in terms of landscaping and amenities, they'd be providing shrubs within planter boxes around the front of the building to create an outdoor seating and band area. And they'd also be providing a bicycle rack, which is required by ordinance. And then lastly, they would be providing shrubs along the fence and the parking lot entrance. Lighting is something that we take a look at, as is pretty typical at this point in the process. A lot of times the lights are not, we don't have cut sheets of the actual lighting at this time, which is okay. But they are required to be fully shielded and pointed downward. And so that's something we will certainly take a look at before the town issues any final certificate of occupancy. For drainage, because of the small size of the property, of course, a retention pond is not required. But there are parking lot drain tiles that will convey the stormwater to the town's storm system on Oak Street. In terms of the community response, we did receive a letter of remonstrance from Terry Hiles, who owns property and resides on the second story of the TH Marble company that is off to the east. He had raised some concerns about noise, traffic, light pollution, drainage, and property values, and we had passed along that remonstrance letter to you all. And he prefers to see no curb cut onto Oak Street as proposed. Lastly, he is proposing a 10 p.m. restriction on outdoor bands as well. So with that, my recommendation would be to approve the site plan and to consider a stipulation regarding an end time for outdoor music if agreeable to the petitioner and remonstrator. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address those. Thank you.
For the presentation, Adam, any questions for Adam?
I do have a quick question. So do we have any kind of noise ordinances for the town of Fortville as far as outdoor and live music is concerned?
That's a great question. We do. We have a noise ordinance. It's pretty basic and it's pretty vague, which has its pros and cons. But unlike other noise ordinances that I've seen, and by the way, the noise ordinance is housed within the town code. A lot of times they refer to decibels in terms of how much noise you can make with certain activities. We don't have anything like that. It basically says if you're making loud noises, if you're causing issues, that you're in violation of the noise ordinance. That's it. So it is pretty vague. But there is nothing that I could find that deals with any specific closing time or anything like that.
So we don't have any times outlined with the town as far as like if, because we do a lot of music festivals and
Right.
whatnot throughout the year. So there's no time frames like, hey, music has to be done by 11
Right.
or anything like that.
I think from what I've gathered, it's been informally done between the former police chief and some business owners to say, if you could stop the outdoor concerts at 11, whatever it may be. But to the best of my knowledge and through my research, I didn't find anything in writing that speaks to that one way or the other.
Typically, it's an ad hoc per event or per approval, depending upon the adjacencies. So if there's a neighborhood adjacencies, it's a different approach. I know that from a county perspective, and specifically the ordinance we have with regard to noise and agritourism, has been incredibly difficult to enforce and just causes a lot of problems when you have a decibel reading, when you have a point of measurement, when it's required of the town to have a decibel reader, which is expensive and someone to administer it. There's just a lot of problems that we get into with noise and complexities that we have to consider if we're putting something like that in place, especially if we're applying it to one location. So just some different things.
Now, the one question that came up from the petitioner, and it's a good question, is does the Plan Commission have the authority to make a condition like this and to set a time? My belief is that you do as part of your authority, but I'll actually defer to Alex on that point, since I haven't had a chance to speak with him prior to that. Alex, are you there on the line?
I am, and I agree with you, Adam, that the Plan Commission does have the authority to impose conditions for approval.
So I think, just to tee it up, and probably should have outlined this, but if you were inclined to do a stipulation, I think there's probably 4 different things that you could do. One is you could say, no, we don't want to impose a stipulation because that really should be dealt with at a town level, not on a one-off basis. We don't want to set a precedent for this particular property. So instead, we'd ask that even though the site plan ends here, you can still ask the town council to consider revisiting the noise ordinance in one capacity. So basically, you could punt the question and have the council decide that. The other one is you could do nothing, just leave it as is. And then I think really the other 2 choices would be, that's probably really only choice number 3 is you could pick a time. If they're in it, as you know, with these conditions, to the extent that it can be mutually agreeable between the petitioner and the remonstrators, that's ultimately what the town is always looking for, rather than imposing something that either party can't live with. But just to go over that, I think those are probably your 3 different options if you chose to pursue them. And I do think that, there is a strong case to be made that, should this be done on a one-off basis or look at it more comprehensively so other business owners can weigh in at the council level? I think there's some legitimacy to that as well, if you wanted to take that approach. So there's a few different options.
Sure. Just a couple of follow-up questions for me. When it says bike rack and those other items as required, that means that the design standards require it. And
Correct.
it is put into the plan as required. It's not, we're gonna, as required if you tell them or not, right?
Oh, as required by zoning ordinance.
Got it, okay.
Right. Anywhere it says as required, that's by zoning ordinance.
Okay, tell us about the Oak Street curb cut. What's going on there?
Well, so as you know, that is a vacant lot that's between the property where it says house and Denver's. And at the rezone time, we even touched on, is there a better way to do access to that back lot that might mitigate some of the concerns from the residents? The problem is that, in my view, while I respect what Mr. Hiles proposed, I think it's going to make it even more challenging to navigate through the site. So what he had proposed, I'll just, I can be able to see it online, but so what he was thinking is, could we put a fence over here and then have one way out over here onto the alley? But as you can see, we've got a couple parking spaces, the dumpster area, it's going to take away for some parking over there. So while it's not a bad idea, I think it just it's not advisable in this situation. But additionally, I know some of the residents, especially Bob and Bob Starrett, was concerned about more traffic on the alley. So with just one point of consideration is, are you trading one problem for another one? So.
Well, we are not a one-way typical town, and so when you have a one-way superimposed over, it's confusing, actually more dangerous. Okay. Another question: what does the DOT have to do with any of this?
Well, nothing.
Okay.
So the current access.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can Lacey repeat her question?
Yes. What does the DOT have to do with this?
Okay. Thank you.
So INDOT has nothing to do
Okay.
with this at this time. The access that is being provided to Denver's, I believe it's pretty much free flow access off of Broadway, historic free flow access. As part of the road diet project, we are taking a look at access points to all sorts of businesses throughout the Broadway corridor, in coordination with INDOT and with their consultant. And once those plans, I don't want to say are solidified, but once they've been more fully vetted by staff, And I believe we're gonna go out to the business owners and show them what the plans are.
There's no contingencies within our decisions today, subject to DOT approval or not? There's nothing?
No.
Okay, good. All right. What about the surface? What is the surface going to be of this parking area that we are reviewing?
Asphalt.
And last time we had a conditional approval of the zoning, we had a condition that the house would not be demoed. We still see it there. Has there been any requests for changes to that condition?
No.
And I think that does it for me. I've hogged all the questions.
No.
Members of the commission,
all.
what other questions might you have?
I want to circle back to the Broadway access.
Mhm.
It's currently full paved, correct? There's access along the entire parcel.
Mhm.
Is there anything in the main street, or I guess the Broadway overlay district that says that that's not desirable? Especially when we're looking at a change of use, and that's what I'm thinking about from the DOT perspective as we get into, so change of use, you're gonna have outdoor seating, it's now unshielded, drivers can drive right up into what is,
Those planters are like 800 pounds a piece.
okay,
Yeah, you can't move them.
And let me defer to Joe, because he had reviewed those Broadway plans for access.
okay.
Do you remember what they're showing for Denver's?
There's no access, the alley's got access, and Oak Street, nothing in the front, so it'll all be covered.
Okay. So at a minimum,
Which I guess.
and they have a
so
curb and a sidewalk,
that deals with it in late 23 or
Right.
24.
but not at the
In the
moment.
next 2.5 years, do we potentially have any concerns for pedestrian outdoor? I just, with the ability for someone to, especially since there's parking on the front part,
Mhm.
someone could pull up and drive right next to that. And-
Yeah.
And there's nothing
It's a good point.
inhibiting vehicular
I
traffic.
mean, honestly, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
That's why we're glad that you're on the board.
Just thinking
You know,
about,
I think to Fritz's point, that is, because of the weight of those things as a barricade, that could be reasonable. I think that really the only other way that I can think of dealing with it is, maybe bollards. A curb probably wouldn't work, only because you have to redo the lot. So,
So just to confirm, what we're talking about are the 2 handicap and the 3 parking spots that we see there on the left-hand side of the structure? Is that what we're talking about?
and the whole front.
out in front,
The whole
especially
paved
along
frontage.
Broadway, because your concern is, if I'm understanding correctly, is that you're gonna have people that are sitting out there, but the speed limit on Broadway is still 40, people are routinely.
So I could be driving westbound on Broadway, and I could essentially use the paved frontage as my deceleration lane, and then park in one of those spots. I'm not saying someone would do that, but you could,
Right.
if there's enough space that they could get off of 36, 67 Broadway
Mhm.
into that, especially with someone behind them. I wonder if moving the planters a little bit to where there's not a full driving, just the ability to,
So that people can't use it as a.
so you're not driving around the front of a business.
Yeah.
On the parcel, right? Maybe it's
That could be
overblown,
interesting.
I don't know.
Maybe when the petitioner speaks, if we can always.
Sure.
Discuss
That could be a good
So something to think about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
To Nathan's point, when Broadway changes, there will be a curb there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And we
a-
talk about in the interim.
So this is a
Something
2.5 year.
aesthetically pleasing that would keep
So
someone
you're
from
right, that could be the
driving.
easiest solution, is just push those out far enough so that really there's only.
Really, they are
pedestrian.
pushed, we did push them. They're further towards the road now, even further than that.
And on the west side of this end of it, those 3, those seem to be out quite a ways, because I pulled up there a
Yeah,
couple
we
times.
pushed them out.
So we do have some members who are participating via Zoom who will be voting on this. I think we do need to be closer to the microphone. So why don't we go ahead, Adam, we'll call you back up.
Okay.
From the petitioner, Fritz, would you like to come up and offer any additional commentary or clarifications for us at the mic? Alex, we don't do any swearing.
I think
in on
it's,
this one.
I think it's all been said already, what I was gonna do there. It's just,
So just 2 clarification questions for me, then I'll open up for everybody
I've
else.
been having a hard time hearing you really hard.
Okay, I'll talk louder. So you are going, the question about the pedestrian
Uh-huh,
and the road, Broadway, you've moved those barriers out further so that cannot be a drive lane.
They would be able to slide right there. The only thing I could do is put up concrete barriers out there around the place along the Broadway if we want to do that, those gigantic concrete barriers.
Now we're introducing a whole,
That would look horrible.
it would look good, and then now it's an obstruction in the clear zone, so.
I can't say I personally I drive by that site
It would
daily.
stop it.
It would not be conducive for someone to pull in anywhere on Broadway in front of that, where those planters sit right now. I think, unfortunately, the bird's eye photos that we have don't really give us justice and really show us how it's actually.
Because I think even on 116th Street, there's Greek's Pizza, there's a ice cream shop right there, and I don't think they have any barriers or something on 116th
Do
Street.
they have seating up front?
Yeah, they let people stand out front, they get
Yeah,
their ice cream
Yeah.
on the
Seating.
highway. Yeah.
I drive through there quite frequently, and I don't see people do what you're worried about. That's not something that I personally would be concerned about, people trying to drive on the pavement in front of there.
Okay, thanks, Wendy.
If people were sitting out there eating, so.
Okay, so one follow-up question that we have for you, Fritz, is with regard to the 10 PM curfew. Would you be agreeable to that for outside?
I'd agree to 11, not 10. Just because then we're setting a precedence, and I've already talked to Jake Burgess. He's planning on having open windows downtown on his bar, where he has a band in there until 11 o'clock also. That probably needs to be addressed by the town council if they want to put in some kind of noise ordinance at 11 o'clock.
Well, okay, so that's something we can consider. Any other questions for Fritz?
What type of fence is gonna go up, the 7-foot fence?
I printed off some. It's a corrugated fence. It makes it look more, gives it that garage feel.
Okay.
I could send you some photos of it.
It's not chain link, that's all I'm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Corrugated.
Yeah.
Okay, any other
Or
questions
metal.
for Fritz? Okay, we do have time in our agenda for this evening for any remonstrance, so there'll be people who would like to speak against this petition. I believe we have someone participating on Zoom. I can't see anyone. If you're coming off of was it Mr. Bryce?
Would this be my
Do you need to click something?
hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
My name is Bryce Owens. I'm an attorney up in Pendleton, and I'm here on behalf of Terry Piles. He and his wife live immediately east of this location. And in listening to the discussion, we submitted a written summary, and I'm not going to take your time to read the whole thing to you. I think what I should do is just hit a couple of highlights based on the discussion so far.
Mr. Bryce, we are having some audio interference. We're moving, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Bryce. Carrie, would you mind chatting to him real quick and just letting him know we can't hear him?
Mr. Owens?
He's greatly opposed to the curb cut
Mr. Owens, we can't hear you.
on Oak Street because those headlights facing direct. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. Owens, we cannot hear you. There's some audio interference.
Yes, can you hear me now?
No,
Can you hear me?
not clearly.
It's broken.
Maybe turn off.
Hello? I'm not sure what to do.
Call in, sometimes that works better.
It looks like he's on his
I
iPhone.
don't know what the audio would be.
Yeah, so Mr.
Let me
Owens,
turn off, freeze up some bandwidth. Can you hear me now?
a little bit better. Try one more time.
Okay, so I turned off the video, so that frees up some bandwidth, so maybe that helps.
Go right ahead.
I'll try to make this very, very short. His principal objection has to do with the curb cut on Oak Street. We think there should be the screening fence to protect the residents from the headlights in that location. We think this can be accommodated and still have a sufficient amount of parking spaces. So you would pull in through the existing curb cut a little further up on Oak Street, and you would cut through the spaces that are presently marked 17, 18, and 19 on the site plan. And you still have more than 23 spaces, and those spaces could move over closer to the house anyway. And if you let people out the alley, then it's safer because you have a different way of getting in and out. We're worried about the safety of it and really about the curb cut being located where it's at.
Okay.
As far as time, as far as the suggestion of maybe 11 o'clock cutoff, he was really looking for 10. Perhaps we could do a 10 o'clock cutoff Sunday through Thursday, and then maybe something later on Friday and Saturday.
Okay. And just,
So that-
just to clarify, Mr. Owens, your recommendation for the curb cut would be to create one-way traffic?
It would not have to be one way,
Okay.
but we think it's important that there be a second way into this spot because there's if you try to get a fire truck in there, you're not going to have any safe way to do it, of doing that. And if somebody was back there and there was a car burning, for example, in space number 19, they have no way out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Owens. Anyone else on the line or live who would like to have any testimony on remonstrance this evening? Okay, let the record show none. Fritz, do you want any rebuttal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going through the alley is too dangerous because I live there. There's people that drive, and if you crisscross back in there, somebody would get hit. There's just too many blind spots in that alley. Now I'm agreeable to 11 on Friday and Saturday night and 10 during the week. Okay.
Very good. Any other questions on the rebuttal? Okay, we do have time in our agenda for representatives of the government to have any testimony this evening. Come on up, Tanya.
Take me a while to get there, I'm a little hobbly. Tanya Davis, Fortville Town Council. Be careful in restrictions on times because I'm really concerned about that with the other business owners in town. So I think if you're gonna look at a time restraint, we need to look at it at the council level. Let's do some work on the ordinance. Be careful. I know that, for instance, let's just put it this way. I live 2 blocks from Jake's place and I can hear his music at night, but I live next to a train track, you know, and I've gotten used to that. I don't even hear it at night. So Mr. Howell has lived in that property for a long time, and he's lived right there on the highway for a long time, so he's fully aware of noise. I just think we need to be real careful about restraining live entertainment and stuff like that, because I think we're gonna see more of that as time goes on. So you need to you can't put a restriction on one and not the other, is all I'm trying to say. So keep that in mind.
Sure. Take time. Anyone else from the government? Anyone else?
Lacey, this is Alex
Hey, Alex.
and board. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on Tanya's comments, I agree with that as well. And just to clarify, Adam asked whether the Plan Commission has the ability under the town zoning code to impose commitments for a site plan review. And the answer is yes. However, it seems to me the type of commitment that the commission is considering here about restricting hours or noise, those seem more in line with a commitment that would be imposed on the variance side of things, the actual use of the property, rather than the components of the site plan itself. You know, the landscaping or the lighting. You know, if there was an issue with the lighting and the lights were going to be on until 1 a.m. or something, then you're tying the hours of operation and those lights to a component of the site plan. So while it is clear that under the town's code and Indiana law, the commission does have the ability to impose commitments and conditions related to the site plan, I think we need to be careful, the commission should be careful that any such conditions are actually tied to components of the site plan and not the use itself, which is a different consideration.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. Any questions for Alex on that? Any follow-up questions for Adam? Okay, we can either have some discussion as a council, or we can open up discussion more formally with a motion if anybody is so inclined.
I do have a question. When Mr. Owens was talking about the parking lot being one way in, it shows on the site plan that that is 24 feet across, it looks like. Isn't that more than enough room for two cars to drive past each other so you could have two-way traffic at that point? A car coming in and a car exiting at the same time?
Brittany, our traffic experts are nodding yes in here.
Okay.
The whole ones are in the room. Anyone who's traffic expert, they're all nodding.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we do have that opening. Okay, so anybody would like to either have discussion or try for a motion?
I would make a motion to approve with no time stipulation. However, urge the town council to revisit our town,
Curfew and noise ordinances?
Noise ordinance,
Very good.
thank you.
Okay, so there's been a motion to approve with a note to the town council to reconsider both curfew and noise ordinances with adjacent residencies, or just reconsider it, got it. Okay,
I'll second.
and a second. Okay, let's open this up for discussion. Any, any talking points that we didn't cover that anyone wants to bring up?
I think the only thing I would ask the petitioner is try to consider what Nathan was talking about. If there's some way without making it look silly to protect the people that are out front there. I don't know what that would be.
Right.
You know, just something for somebody turning in off Broadway. I don't think it's gonna happen, but if there's some way to
Right.
aesthetically put something.
Like I said, those things they're heavy. We had to move them with a bobcat.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily concrete bollards, but
Yeah.
I would ask you to consider if there's something you can put out there. That's the only issue I have with it, and that's a small issue.
Lots of suggestions this evening. Anyone else?
If those are as heavy as you say, I think we'd be fairly protected. It's just, people may not, think people do that, but the things people do,
I'd love to make a suggestion that NDOT would hurry up and go ahead and start the projects.
Should we make that part of our
We are
motion?
taking.
Can we make that part of the plan?
That's how
If I
we're-
could, I would.
that's how we roll here. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the case with a recommendation to the town council to reconsider curfew and noise ordinance. And a second, are we ready for a vote? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate, and any abstain. Okay, motion carries.
Thank
That, sure, thank you for participating. Any board comment this evening? And a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Amanda. Second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 7:06. Thank you for your efficient time this evening.
Everybody.
Hey, thank you.
Good night.
He's gonna buy something on next week. I'm trying to keep it up.
Good to see you. Oh my goodness, I know. My husband invited over grandparents. Parents are not in Florida this time of year anymore. And I gotta go cook some hamburgers.
Oh, there you go. Well, let us know when you're done.
Good to see you. I know. Okay, good job. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Good night, everyone.
I know,
Good shoes.
Might somebody will catch it. Is it still going on?
I think so.
There you go.
Yeah.
I will see you later. See you, Joe.
See you.
Hey, a lot of people do comment me on my shoes.
Did we shut all this down?
And one of these days, I'm going to pick your brain and talk to you about, and I don't even know if the county would like it.
Good to see you guys.
You too.
I gotta go have dinner.
Oh, good thing. Did you turn off the Zoom?
Yeah, no, it's these public hearings.
I know this person has that one in white.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to you. Bye, everybody.